Wait for it. We are now live. Hi, welcome to Modern Dad Council. My name is Tommy Maloney, filling in for Chris Eischen, who is on assignment. I believe he is on assignment working on this. Eric Lehman is with us, also from Game Changer, but I think Chris is on assignment working on this new. Have you heard, Eric, that Earth has now a cousin? NASA just discovered that there's another very similar planet like Earth, and I think that's what Chris is doing. I think Chris is working on that right now. So he's on assignment. I think J40 is on assignment. Thomas Pfeiffer, the rumor is he will be joining us as well. But for all you modern dads out there and your modern moms out there, thank you so much for hanging out. Again, I'm Tommy Maloney filling in for Chris Eischen, and we have the one, the only, Mr. Eric Lehman, with us live and in person. How the heck are you, Eric? It's been too long.
It has been too long, and I can tell you that the world of being a modern dad has definitely. I just came back from assignment. I just came back from an amazing convention with the National Speakers Association, and I'm really excited to follow up with all my old friends and new colleagues, and just kind of build a bigger caravan and just make room for all the collaborative energy that seems like it wants to show up, both with the Game Changer movement and also something that I don't know if I've shared too much, but I'm now a global account manager for an organization called Hotels for Hope. So yeah, I'm excited.
Congratulations.
Yeah, so I feel like there are new ways at looking at revenue growth and crowdfunding, and so I'm just really excited to kind of, I don't want to call it affiliate marketing because it's something different. It's just like it's relationship marketing through partnered organizations, and so I feel like Hotels for Hope is a really good representative of this new trend that makes every transaction count in society. So, you know, when people book through Hotels for Hope, they actually make a $2 contribution sort of invisibly to organizations that support youth, including potentially the Game Changer movement. So, I mean, it's really great to go out into the world and create all this alignment.
And I know you've got a new crowdfunding event or project, so we'll talk about that real quickly. Since you were at National Speakers Association convention, you didn't mention you know me, because I'm one of the weirdos that on their Facebook page that, you know, puts in questions and they go, "We've already answered that question, you dumb rookie. Why are you asking?" So I just want to make sure you didn't mention my name there, because they would probably have thrown you out. Even though I still have friends that are in National Speakers Association, but yeah, you didn't mention my name, right?
Well, you know, I didn't, but you know, I mean, we're all on this planet to make a ruckus in our own way, and so I've been, you know, diving into the world of Seth Godin, and if we don't ask questions, then there's no growth, there's no learning. So I'm glad you're doing what you're doing in the way you do it, you know, and I feel like you know, I've noticed that even in my own energy, I feel like I'm the more business-minded person in the spiritual gatherings I go to, and I'm the more spiritual-minded or hearted person in the business gatherings I go to. So, you know, I'm probably next in line, you know, in terms of making a ruckus there. I sort of do it with a smile, you know, as part of, you know, the organization rather than on the outside looking in. So
that's how I feel too. I feel like I'm on the outside looking in. All right, so today on Modern Dad Council, so I just want to give you folks that are watching, thank you for watching. Thanks for listening to the Modern Dad Council. I literally got off a plane a couple hours ago and was on the Super Shuttle, and like I said, Chris Eischen is not here, so I said, hey, I'll do it again. Nobody sent any nasty emails that I'm aware of. I started looking through articles about dads, and one of the things I came across was from NBC News, and they were talking about there's still a little bit of a bias out there of dads. And even though the scientific research isn't really, as I like to say, pinpointing the reason that dads are really super needed in our kids' lives, it again seems like a little bit of a bias, Eric, that, as a former stay-at-home dad, I mean, I had a blast. I mean, that's one of the best jobs you'll ever have. That, obviously it's all about the love, not about the dollar bill. But as somebody with your organization of Game Changers trying to, change the world of video games, do you still, as Seth Godin would say, within your tribe, do you still see a bias out there of, dads being not really considered nurturers? And what do you see out there again with your friends and your tribe?
I think it's a great conversation. So thank you for positing the question. And I guess I see a full spectrum. I see dads who embrace and just own the good provider role, and they knock that out of the park, and then they hope and sort of expect everything else to be taken care of by the mother. And when I say the mother, that takes on different meanings. I mean, there's so many different blended families out there. There's just a lot of different ways of looking at maternal energy. And sometimes that's a grandmother. Sometimes that's a childcare provider. And a lot of the times childcare providers are women. And I'm also seeing that some men are entering the ranks of professional childcare.
I've got a great friend who has a very successful daycare down in Denver, and I think his is one of those they call more of an adventure daycare. So it's not just sitting around eating crackers all day. He takes the kids out and they do things, they explore things. So you're right. I mean, you are maybe seeing more of those type of roles that aren't as popular. And real quickly, one of the things you're just touching on. So I've been on the road for the past 2 weeks, so I've really had to rely on my family here in Colorado to get my son to all of his events. And we have actually my wife's nephew lives with us. Very positive role model. I love this kid to death. And so again, to use what you were just talking about with mothers, and it's not, like you said, it's not always the moms as the role model. It are good English. It is other females, but at the same time, we have other positive male role models out there as well.
Well, and I think we live in sort of a custom world, right? So I mean, there are just as many trends that talk about this gender bias as there are people who fully embrace and value the new role of the father. And I'm constantly reinventing that job description. And sometimes I'm doing it through non-intervention. I'm doing it in ways where just being present with my kids is the best way to show up as a dad. And rather than showing up even with that job description of dad, I'm showing up as Eric, as someone with an open heart, trying to just remain as present as possible. And I think the other aspect of that is that it takes the pressure off of, in a way, the good provider role is sort of something I knew how to do. Like I knew how to make money and I knew how to just, provide for my kids. But at some point I realized that wasn't all that was being asked of me, and that I had way more to offer than just my paycheck at the end of a few weeks. So for my own personal journey, my relationship with my kids has grown exponentially since since somewhat falling off of the horse in the good provider role and reinvesting in the, you know, quality time, you know. So I mean, I think it gets back to love languages. I mean, so there's this amazing book about the 5 love languages, and
Right.
you know, quality time and gifts and you know, acts of service and words of affirmation, and one other that I usually forget one of them.
Don't
And
worry, there's not going to be a test after this.
physical touch,
There
you
you
know,
go.
and so and that, you know, when you look at your all of your relationships with those love languages in mind, you know, my youngest daughter needs a good hug session from her daddy, and I know that, like, and that's just, it's crucial, and it's for both of us. Like, you know, if we don't have a good hug session, you know, every visit, then something's off. And so just to really be present and just to say, you know, I don't know what all the national or international trends are. I just know it feels right in my own unit, you know, in my own family unit. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, it's funny you talk about hugs. You know, those Sundays when I'm dropping my son off with his mom, and he'll give me a hug and go, "It was a good weekend, Dad." And you know, that's always touching. But at the same time, I feel it's the dad guilt, or unfortunately, I still have my Catholic guilt with me. And if I don't get that response from him when I'm dropping him off, if I don't get to hear him say it was a good weekend, then there's times I feel like I failed as a father. But it can't be as the little cliche goes now, or the cliche saying of, it can't always be a Disneyland weekend. There has to be chores. There has to be other things than just fun. But in a kid's eyes, I mean, especially because we both have young kids, you know, in a young kid's eyes, it has to constantly be fun. But if you, like you were saying, is growing, if you're growing as an individual, if you're growing as a dad by, you know, showing them different chores or showing them different ways of doing things, I think in the back of their mind that eventually they'll get it. And, you know, again, we're not always the nurturers. I mean, we're the ones that are at times telling our kids, boy or girl, you know, go rub some dirt on it, you'll be fine. And I think at times that's probably a better solution to maybe just not necessarily toughen the kids up, but maybe give them a little dose of reality that, yeah, life sucks. You're going to have boo-boos. You're going to have physical boo-boos, and you're going to have mental boo-boos. It's you as the individual, it's you as the child, on how they bounce back. And it's us as the dads maybe trying to teach them different ways of bouncing back.
You know, I mean, and maybe this is just how my lenses work, but what you just triggered with what you just shared, you know, one of the things that, and I did this in partnership with my ex-wife, that we did well as parents was we let the kids decide their own reaction when they fell. So that was, you know, if I did one thing that I knew in my heart of hearts was right, from a really early age, you know, even with like the early bumps and bruises, you know, I just waited that 5 seconds, you know, and let the kids create their own reaction. And my sense is when you do that, you actually probably cut down on 80% of the drama-seeking behavior, you know. So, you know, carry that forward. I think what's interesting, if you look kind of nationally, or maybe even internationally, is that we are in a fear-based society. We're worried about what the outside looking in thinks about the bumps and bruises our kids have. So, you know, anything that shows up in a physical manifestation, you know, then there's a question of child protective services and things like that.
Well, you You bring up a very valid point. And, along with our topic of talking about, why dads are important in our kids' lives is you just said, doing things that are right. And there are times where are we actually doing the right thing? Because uh, in the back of my mind personally, I'm always judging myself going, that perfect example, Eric, of, when one of the kids falls down and not having that quick reaction. My reaction was always laugh it off. Come on, laugh, 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 and try and get a laugh out of them instead of them realizing there might be pain. And so again, there's times where you think and you hope you're doing the right thing. I mean, I'll always remember my former wife telling me, about being a stay-at-home dad, and she said, "You're probably going to fail at it," before it even happened. So I really had to learn how to make choices and decisions, right or wrong. I mean, I tell people the story. There was the one time where I went to get the phone and Connor fell off the bed, and I feel like the biggest idiot on the planet. I felt like, a perfect Homer Simpson moment, the Doe moment. So it is hard to know your right from wrong as far as being a dad and wanting to be a successful dad. Again, us having that stereotype that we're not the nurturers, even though we're trying to be the nurturers, but are we doing the right thing? And it's like you just use that perfect example of what to do when our kids fall down, or I can't think of the person's name, but she would talk about at the family dinner table at dinner, and her dad would say, "All right, what did you fail at today? Not what went well for you, but what did you fail at?" So they, at a young age, they learned that failing was good. And that's one of those situations where you go, that's a brilliant idea. And
yeah, go ahead.
Say, again, we don't know that we're doing the right thing until later in life, like you've discovered, Eric.
Well, I mean, and I feel like, and I mean, we are constant works in progress, as is our job as a father, and on top of that, single parenting it's another animal entirely. And I was really reflecting on this recently, and I remembered back to, and of course, I've just been in Game Changer campaign mode, and I was reflecting on the hardest thing that I ever had to do as a single parent so far was tell my kids what happened following the Sandy Hook shootings. And I was totally overmatched for it, and there was like, I had no guidebook. There was just like, when I was a kid, school was the safest place for me and all the other kids in the world. And in one felt swoop, that sense of safety was shattered and disrupted in a huge way. And so that was a big deal, and that's part of what created the Game Changer movement. So I share that because you never know what your job description is until you're in it, so I guess that was one thing that I just wanted to share, is that, like, I was, with tears in my eyes, I was just telling my kids that this horrible thing happened, and that was just I had no idea that was going to be part of my job description.
Well, and here in Colorado, we had that tragic event of Columbine. And this was before I was a dad. And I remember looking around. I was working in a call center at that time. And I remember looking around and seeing the parents and their reaction. And I couldn't relate to it. I mean, I could have empathy for them because, we're watching it as it's happening on TV. And one of the gals I worked with, this gal named Susie, her son was actually there for a baseball game. And it wasn't, she wasn't hysterically freaking out. She was a mom. She was concerned. So it's like you said, Eric, you know, having those conversations. I mean, it's again, it's not something written in the dads or parenting handbook,
Right.
how to handle tragic events like that. And so it's hard because again, you want to say the right thing, you want to do the right thing, and I'm sure you're trying your best as a parent to, you know, give that tragic event its due justice. But it's going to be, you know, how the kids interpret it and how the kids move forward with events like that.
Well, and I think that's the other thing is that, you know, we as present parents, you know, we just get in touch with our own hearts and sort of throw the job description, you know, daddy, mommy, whatever, out the window and just say, what is my heart feeling right now? And how do I just show up to that inner guidance? And I feel like that's the other thing that I wanted to share around this part is that, you know, we care so much about the things that people see, you know, like the broken arm, the black and blue, all these things that show up on the outside. But yet there isn't, I think, enough intentional conversation around the inner black and blue, you know, and, you know, what it could look like to really, you know, and I think that's what I'm kind of touching the tip of the iceberg with the Game Changer movement is that, you know, how much black and blue are we giving our kids by allowing them to stay in the game world, you know, in the violent video game world, you know, I mean, and here's the flip side, you know, I mean, what you were talking about, like that dinner table, you know, how did you fail today, which is a beautiful conversation. And ironically, you know, knowing the kind of drum I've been beating for a long time about the gaming world, failing is what happens 70% of the time in the game world. And it's reinforced. And so there are so many value added things that can happen in the game world. It makes no sense to throw out the positives of the game world, you know, even though that there are a few negatives with regard to the content. So this is the fine line we're walking. Like, can we dive into the game world? Can we meet our kids? Can we create a game that will have a father reintegrate, you know, with his son or with his daughter and play that game? Because that's where the kids' eyes and hearts are right now, many of them. So like, how do we integrate and meet the kids at eye level, even though both sets of eyes might be looking at a screen rather than each other, you know? And that's the first step. So I mean, these are really, you know, there's no roadmap for this that's formalized, that, you know, came when our kids came home from the hospital. So.
Well, one thing I want to, you know, definitely talk about is a Game Changer movement and what you're trying to accomplish, Eric. But you know, as you were talking, I was reliving a moment just a few weeks ago, and like I said, my wife's nephew Jonathan is with us, and again, a great kid. He's moved from the East Coast, wanted to change, you know, a little bit of his own culture of moving here to Colorado, and he loves his video games, and he and my son, I kind of egged them both on because I wanted to just see the reaction. I wanted to see them interact with each other. So they played Madden football. And it was just, for me, I don't play video games. I haven't played video games since I had my Atari, and I played Space Invaders all day, all night. But that's been eons. And so I've taken it upon myself to not go back into that world. But I wanted to see their reaction. I wanted to see them, again, interact. And it was just funny because Jonathan, you know, he's really good at this Madden football, and my son thought he was really good at Madden football. But it wasn't about the contest. It was, in my view, it was more about just watching and observing and seeing the fun I mean, we all know how violent, hockey, as I'm wearing my Blackhawks hat, and how football, but it's also, if you can take the game out of the game and make it more of a fun event, that's what it was for me. And so the other little bit of a segue, I just heard that, as you well know, there are professional gamers out there. They're
Mhm.
now going to be testing professional gamers for PEDs, which I find kind of funny and ironic at the same time.
Wow.
So let's talk, Eric. Let's talk about game changers and what's going on there, because I know you have a brilliant cause. I know it's a cause close to your heart. Um, what's going on with that currently?
Well, I mean, thanks for asking it, and I feel like that's what the being at the National Speakers Association convention helped really clarify with sort of laser focus what's next. And so, I was alluding to the fact that it's time to meet our kids where they are, and that's sort of a 180-degree shift from where I started with the Game Changer movement. So we're now actually ramping up to develop a game platform that knows. I mean, I just read a statistic that says between birth and age 21, both boys and girls will have experienced 10,000 hours at least of video gaming before the age of 21. So I mean, if you read Malcolm Gladwell, 10,000 hours means you are at mastery. Whether or not you agree with that, that's a huge chunk of time. And what inspires me now is like, what if we could take that time and transform it into something that's good for not only the family, but the community and the society at large? What if we could take all these big data challenges that are coming down the pike and have kids sort of sift through the like gigabits of or terabytes of data that we can gamify and then make tremendous application around. That's the question that I don't want to say keeps me up at night, because it just inspires me,
Right.
so and I think, to make it really personal, there's a few things that kind of triggered this along the way. Is that when I was living in a homeless shelter, the games that were available for the kids at the shelter were real. I mean, this is like in 1990, before Grand Theft Auto and Call of Duty. These were the games that were available were still pretty violent. And I think it was right around the time of early Mortal Kombat and all these other kind of caricature games that are getting more and more true to life. And I guess what inspires me now is, the kids in homeless shelters are probably the most resourceful kids I know, because they've had to get over obstacles, real life obstacles that not many other kids have. So on the flip side is, there's not too many people saying, the habits that you develop with your time right now, they're going to carry you forward the rest of your lives. So, I mean, specifically, if I can go into these homeless shelters for youth and say, let's do something different. Let's play a different game. Let's change our game. And, whether it's, playing the new game that we create, or creating what we're calling conversation pieces, PEACES, where we actually make collaborative community art out of the cut up violent video games, that's the really exciting thing. So
Can you talk more about that, Eric? I'm always fascinated, and I don't think a lot of our viewers know about that. So can you go a little bit more in depth about that part of Game Changer?
Yeah, I mean, like, the idea is, it's combining a lot of different avenues. So I mean, my long-term vision, my big, hairy, audacious goal is to be the go-to for all the CDs and DVDs in the world to be repurposed. And so, you know, it costs a lot of money to recycle CDs and DVDs because they're made out of number 7 plastic rather than number 1 or 2 plastic, which means that they undergo a unique process that is not the mainstream recycling. So if we can take them out of the trash stream, literally and figuratively, I mean, like specifically, if we can take violent video games out of the content trash stream, you know, then we've got this amazing opportunity. And this all, you know, came from a vision that happened 2 months after Sandy Hook. I just saw the idea of kids lining up for uplifting events carrying nothing but a violent video game as their ticket price. And then the next day I saw a vision of the AIDS quilt. So I said, okay, we're going to combine these two things, and we're going to create expansive community art out of the violent video games that are traded in. And now, like, you know, we're trying to use social media and all these other opportunities to challenge the entertainers of the world to wear dresses made out of repurposed violent video games. And there's a whole bunch of other opportunities to really celebrate this movement and to create more and more spokes of the wheel and just expand awareness. So, and then the overall goal, at least in the near term, is to inspire 1 million kids, 1 million youth, to trade in at least one violent video game. And so that's, you know, that's a big idea. But what's recently shown up is, like, if we're going to create a video game that's going to replace the violent video games that the kids are going to trade in, we got to create it with the kids, you know. So we're going to create a pathway so that the first 100 or 1,000 kids that are brave enough to change their own game, to trade in a game, they're going to be invited into the creation process, so that we create buy-in, you know, with our processes. So that's the new nuance of the game changer movement as I know it today.
So, Eric, have you encountered ideas from the kids that you've been with to, you know, kind of create their own video games of what they want to see out of a video game?
Well, I mean, we're not entirely there yet, except for the fact that I've been polling a few kids who are somewhat hooked on Grand Theft Auto and Call of Duty and all these other, you know, violent games. The interesting thing is, like, I thought the battle was going to be harder than it might actually be, because there's so many, like, you know, some of the kids I talked to, they're like, I don't necessarily need to shoot everything in creation. I just want to ride on this really cool bike that is only found on Grand Theft Auto. And if this bike were found in a different environment with a world as graphically appealing and realistic as the one found in Grand Theft Auto, then they would have no need for the game, you know, for the violent aspect of it. So, but I think it's important to just pose the question, you know, because the question hasn't been posed on a large enough scale. You know, what would a game look like, you know, where the only thing that it didn't have was violence? You know, I mean, there's now a first-person shooter game that helps science, the scientific community, the medical community identify malaria cells. It's called Malaria Spot. You know, there's a game that helps the scientific community fold proteins called Fold It, and that's helped get closer to a vaccine for HIV. You know, so I mean, there's so many different ways to look at gaming. And so, like, I recently have seen the light where I'm just like, okay, we can't go away from gamification. We need to run towards it. We need to embrace it, and we need to transform it.
Well, yeah, and I mean, unfortunately, I mean, to play devil's advocate, Eric, I mean, if I'm a video game company, you know, I'm going to be, you know, more apt to go, well, where's the dollar sign? I'm going to chase the dollar. I don't care that I mean, not to sound judgmental or just to generalize the world of video games, but again, they're going to be chasing that dollar sign, and they're not going to be going, well, we need to come up with ideas where maybe the kids are sitting around doing crochet and they get points for every little needle through the hole thingy. I mean, unfortunately, you and as you are aware, Eric, I mean, you do have a tough battle, trying to create a positive environment for that community. But the thing to remember too is, how can you take a video game and how can you kind of repurpose it like you're trying to, and how can you make it, maybe profitable for the video game companies?
Well, I mean, I think, all these things are possible. The the question is how. Like, how do we, how do we create buy-in? And I mean, the truth is that what is the most addictive part of the video games is not really the violence. It's the sense of purpose and the sense of significance. A first-person shooter game, you are recreating the most significant moment that can be shared between two people who don't really care about each other. The person who's holding a gun to another person's head saying, I control whether or not you live or die. That is a hugely significant moment. And I also believe, to just call out the gaming industry, I believe it's a cop-out. I believe that they know this. They know that this is the easiest way to create a sense of significance. But it's also, we're gonna look back at this day, much like the smokers do from the 60s and 70s. Oh, well, we didn't know it was bad for you then. I'm like, I mean, you know what I mean? So like, I mean, when I thought about smoking, not that I ever really did, I've never smoked a cigarette in my life. It just never computed. I never said, I'm gonna light this thing on fire and breathe it in. Like, Woodsy Owl and Smokey the Bear just said no, like stop, drop, and roll, like whatever, so like for some reason, and I mean to make it personal, like I lost two uncles to lung cancer when I was 12, or when I was 13, and part of that meant that I promised that I was never gonna smoke, I mean, ever in my life. And so, to this day, that promise is still intact.
Well, I tell our kids, I said, if I ever catch you smoking, what am I going to do? And they all go, you're going to rip our lips off with a pair of pliers. I'm like, yes, I am. But it kind of goes back to a little bit at our beginning conversation of, where we as dads fit in. And I think that, the one thing that I see a lot of the times I am watching TV is seeing these, these commercials, these the anti-smoking commercials, and they're pretty grotesque. And I understand they're trying to scare people into making sure that, we're not teaching our kids or nobody's smoking anymore, but they're just ads. And I think it goes back to, again, what we were talking about earlier, Eric, is that not only as parents, but as dads, we need to be that positive role model. So if you are a dad who smokes, maybe you're not going to ever quit, let's say, but, teaching your kids why smoking is so bad and what it does to you physically, and maybe even making a lesson with money and the cost analysis of how much a pack of smokes costs these days. But again, I firmly believe that there's still bias out there of dads of not within. I mean, again, I don't want to just say the whole world, but it just seems that, we're still that minority and not a partnership. Even with our former spouses, we're not part of a partnership. We're still sort of the silent partner in all of this.
Well, I mean, and much like any leadership opportunity, fatherhood is what we make of it. So And I know as a father, my kids don't listen to what I say, especially if I'm not modeling it, you know. So, I mean, fortunately, I don't smoke, and fortunately, I've never smoked. So, when I tell them about, not smoking, I can, with deep conviction, tell them, if you see me smoke, then we can have a different conversation. But I am modeling the behavior. I mean, like, there was this great campaign a while ago that said, "What's your anti-drug?" And I loved that campaign because it was way different than just say no. So I mean, I think we can do something soon that says, "What's your anti-violence?" What's your anti-bullying? What's your anti-this? And not that I like the word anti, but the real question is, what are you putting in place of this temptation? And if you're putting an opportunity to learn something about the world, or play a game that teaches you what malaria looks like, rather than what it means to kill someone, then you're doing the right thing. I can sit down with my kids tonight and say, let's play around a malaria spot.
Right.
And it's a first person shooter game, so like they can get their adrenaline rush with getting target practice, but they're helping to diagnose malaria. And so, like, we got to do things proactively and put it in place of, and we have the opportunity to become better people as a result. I mean, I changed my game because when I first dove into fatherhood, I was a pharmaceutical rep, and I came home and I watched 4 episodes of ESPN in a row, thinking my job was done. Yeah, same one. I mean, what did they change? Like a few updates just to make it a new hour? Holy cow! 45 minutes of every hour was exactly the same, including the commercials. And one day, like early on in my fatherhood, I remember my daughter repeating verbatim with intonations the commercial for Enzyte natural male enhancement. And I was just like, oh boy, like, where did she learn that commercial?
Bob.
ESP Bob, right. This is Bob. Bob is happy, right? Why? Because he takes Enzyte, and Bob's wife is happy, and she had it down, and I'm like, I've got a problem. I'm modeling Bob. So yeah.
It's funny you say that, because when I was my first marriage, it was a Sunday night, and I was having a little problem sleeping, so I was downstairs and Family Guy came on, and my son came down, and he must have been about 4 at the time. And he sits down with me, and I'm not really thinking of Family Guy. I'm just thinking it's a cartoon. Yeah, it's an adult cartoon. But we're sitting there, and I don't know if you've watched Family Guy, but one of the characters is a dog named Brian. And my son points at the screen and goes, Snoopy. I go, time for bed, buddy. Let's go back. Because I was like, yeah, this is not going to be a cartoon for him to be watching.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I mean, and here's the flip side, is that, like, here we are as adult fathers, and just recently I had this experience with another 4 adult gentlemen, and we were hanging out at a restaurant together, and I don't remember the last time it was just men sitting at anything.
Right. And
all of a sudden, a round of dirty jokes showed up, and I was just like, is this right? Like, what what code am I breaching? What? And it was a really interesting moment, because I hadn't told a dirty joke in the longest time. I had no idea that I still remembered them. And yet there I was, enjoying every minute of that. But then I looked around and I'm like, this is just us men. And yeah, I mean, it's important to have those sort of outlets, and to draw the line between adult and children's time.
Right. And I totally agree with you, Eric, because it was funny, because I'm one of those people, I just like to learn more and more about people, no matter what situation is, except when I'm sitting on a flight. If you're sitting next to me, I will be sleeping. But the Super Shuttle driver, and we were talking about I was telling her about my days, my early days of being a stay-at-home dad, and almost the exact same situation was I was playing hockey at the time. And when you're with a toddler all day, there's no real conversation. And so I'd go, to my hockey games and I'd be dropping F-bombs left and right and left. And they'd be looking at me like, you have, like Tourette's. I said, I've been with a little baby all day. Like you were saying, I just needed to be with adults. I needed to kind of just have my little venting moment. And, thinking about what you were just saying, is it right or wrong? It goes back to our original point of, when we do think we're doing the right thing, or maybe we don't know we're doing the right thing. But, in that situation, Eric, me personally, there's nothing wrong with it, because you're just having some fun. You're letting, maybe you're letting some stress out, and that's the way you let stress out. And so it just becomes one of those situations where you recognize the situation, but it's okay. I think it's okay. It's just, you're not out there, doing stupid stuff. Not out there, again, just doing stupid stuff. I think as long as you recognize it and don't take it, to another bizarre level, I think we're okay. I mean, especially, unfortunately, maybe it's expected when you're in a group of men, a group that's going to happen. But there are times where you just want to laugh. There's times where you just want to hear that conversation, and it's okay.
Well, I mean, and I think there's always this moment of like, wow, I used to find that joke funny, and there were some times where I was just like, you know what? Those kinds of jokes aren't that funny to me anymore. But there were, I would say 80% of them that were still really funny. And I guess what's really interesting, about being like in the Game Changer movement, we're trying to help kids, lessen their grip on violence. And if you were to ask me how I think movies and games should be rated, I would rather them see healthy, love and nudity well before they saw violence. But we live in a world where it's exactly the opposite, and that confuses the bejesus out of me. Like, I don't get it. I just don't get it. And here's the other thing is, like, when we get back to like how things are rated, it's different when you're passively watching something than when you're actively participating in something. So when you passively watch a movie that contains violence, it's a little different than actively participating in it and aiming a crosshair at someone's head and pulling a trigger. That's a totally different situation than just watching a movie where someone is doing that and you're just taking it in. I'm not saying it's good, but I'm just saying on the spectrum of things. So on the flip side is, what's the opportunity? What we're learning is kids can be like, this is where education is happening. This is what the opportunity is for true disruption. If we can gamify education, we got something. If we can put physics lessons into the gamified world and make it about a mission in some way, then we got something. Let's just, not kill people in the teaching of that lesson. So we've tapped into something that's huge.
Let me interrupt you there, Eric, because I know you have a new opportunity with Game Changer. You're doing a crowdfunding, correct?
Sure, yeah.
So why don't you, let's talk about that in the time we have left here.
Sure, and I also want to know like all of your life updates, because I mean, this is a beautiful platform to celebrate it all. So that we are. I mean, our big lofty goal of 1 million youth trading in at least one violent video game. It's sort of a a reciprocal challenge. What we really also want is we want people to donate $10 for every violent video game that we inspire youth to trade in.
And
So
where can they do that, Eric? Where can they donate that $10 or more?
well, right, and or more is totally welcome. And the site is not yet live, so I don't yet have the URL for it.
Okay.
But as soon as I do, I will post it on this site. I mean, and well before we promote even this episode of the Modern Dad Council, I should, I would say by Sunday, this late July, we should be fully live. But I don't yet have the precise URL. But keep on the lookout for something that's a Game Changer Movement and Indiegogo. So yeah.
But they can still contact you through your website, correct?
Correct. Yes. So it's dream-catalyst.org, and that is definitely out there and ready for input and sharing. And my direct email is Eric, ERIK, at dream-catalyst.org.
Well, I'm just going to say my wife and I will be recording a couple more podcasts. We've been kind of lax on the podcast due to my horrendous travel schedule. So blendingthefamily.com, Blending the Family on both iTunes and Stitcher Radio. You can find our podcasts out there for blended families. Even if you're not a blended family, if you're dating somebody with kids and you just need some help, please reach out to us at info@blendingthefamily.com. That's info@blendingthefamily.com. Eric, it's always a pleasure talking to you. I am so grateful that somebody showed up. Let me just check my phone. Yeah, Eric Pfeiffer Thomas Pfeiffer is also on assignment in the middle of traffic somewhere. Eric, again, it's always a pleasure talking to you. Chris Eischen, thank you so much for letting me fill in for you. I hope I did Modern Dad Council justice once again. And if you need anything from us, just leave a comment here. We are always available for all of our modern dads and our modern moms and modern parents and even modern dogs. So, Eric, again, thank you so much for your time today. Modern Dad Council will be back next Friday, and we hope you're enjoying the program. Please leave a comment. Let us know what other topics there are out there that you want us to cover. And we have a great panel from Jay Forty to Chris Eischen to Mr. Eric Lehman to Thomas Pfeiffer. So again, thank you for listening. Thanks for tuning in here on iTunes, on YouTube. Have a great rest of your weekend, everybody.
Thank you so much.